Example 4 says determine if the given proportion is true. Now, basically we're trying to figure out if these two fractions are equivalent. So I'm going to take the fraction on the left-hand side, 1/6, and notice that in order to get a numerator of 3, we would need to multiply the numerator by 3 here. So I could multiply this by 3 over 3. And if that is equal to 3 over 18, then we have that the case that those two things are equivalent and the proportion is true. So let's see, 1 times 3 over 6 times 3, that simplifies to 3 over 18, which is what we wanted right here. So the proportion is true. Example 5 says, below you will find Mr. Kwan's recipe for brownies. This is the actual recipe that I use to make my brownies. They are so good. Anyways, the next part says, let's say that this recipe makes 12 equal-sized brownies. Mr. Kwan needs to make exactly 78 brownies for his students this quarter. He's going to also make sure that his students that are allergic to gluten or don't like brownies also get a special treat. Use proportions to figure out exactly how much flour Mr. Kwan will need. So first of all, we know that one batch makes 12 brownies. So we're going to need to make a calculation to figure out how many batches we're going to need if we need to make 78 brownies. So just like in the previous examples, we want to get x by itself. So I'm going to multiply 78 to both sides. So that will cancel that. And then on the left-hand side, we will get 78 over 12 equals x. And if I do 78 divided by 12, that ends up being 6.5. So in order to figure out, in order to create 78 brownies, we're going to have to make 6.5 batches. So if you look back at the recipe, we're going to have to make another proportion. So one batch of brownies calls for, let's see, 1.5 cups of sifted flour. So 1.5 cups of flour. And we know that we have to make 6.5 batches to get the 78 brownies, but what we don't know is how many cups of flour we will need. So from here, notice that this is an example where the unknown is in the denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and flip both of those fractions. So I'm going to do 1.5 cups of flour for one batch of brownies is equal to x cups of flour for 6.5 batches. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply 6.5 on both sides. And so that will cancel with that, and we'll get x is equal to 6.5 times 1.5. So that equals 9.75. So we can say Mr. Kwan will need 9.75 cups of flour. Mr. Kwan is hoping to run in a 10-kilometer race this summer. He knows that 1 mile is approximately 1.60934 kilometers. Use this information and proportions to figure out how many miles 10 kilometers is. So I am running 10 kilometers. and I want to figure out how many miles that is. And we know that 1.60934 kilometers is equivalent to 1 mile, or 1 mile. So now we want to solve for x. So I'm going to swap the numerator and the denominator, and I'm just going to drop the units for now. So we get x over 10 is equal to 1 over 1.60934. And to get x by itself, I'm going to multiply the left-hand side by 10, and I'm going to multiply the right-hand side by 10. So these will divide, and we'll get x is equal to 1 times 10 over 1. I'm going to use parentheses. So 1.60934 times 1. And that's just going to simplify to 10 divided by 1.60934. So I'm going to approximate it or round it to 2 decimal places. So we'll say that that's approximately 6.21 miles.